Hey everyone, I'm Mari Ray, and welcome to 2022, and welcome back to another Sims 3 speed build. I know, I've been missing in action for a while. I know that I have. I've told this story before about how I am with The Sims. That still holds true. If you haven't heard it before, it's basically I'm either totally obsessed with this game, want to play it all the time, or I kind of don't want to touch it. I fell into that last one for quite a while, actually. It's been a minute. It all started mostly because my Sims game broke, and as in it was like crashing on me a lot, and I had to do some purging of some CC and I believe some mods to fix that. I did end up fixing it, but by the time I fixed it, I just didn't feel like playing it, so I haven't for a while. But I have gotten the itch to want to play it again in recent days, so that's where the speed build came from. I'm gonna try to do my speed builds a little different from now on. I'm gonna try to sort of maybe possibly do a little bit more commentary throughout them to try to, I guess, explain my thought process, because when I'm editing these, there's parts that I typically chop out. Sometimes I'm going to try to leave some of that in there and just explain, I guess, what I'm going through. And let me just start by saying most of the time there is no thought process. There's like a basic idea that I start a lot of builds from, and that's no exception for this one here. So the inspiration for this build, if you're curious about where it came from, was sort of, I wanted to play a mad scientist. Absolutely. That's typically where I feel like some of my best builds come out of, at least the builds that I tend to reuse a lot, or at least really enjoy. It kind of comes out of me having like this one like weird way that I want to play my game, and then I kind of get inspired to build off of that idea. And I find that sometimes some of my coolest stuff comes from that. So this one came from me wanting to play a mad scientist sim, and I actually have been sort of playing it in the background, but I have since taken a long pause on that to do some builds because I was not satisfied with the worlds that I had. So I wanted to play it and I loaded up some worlds, but then I'm like, I kind of want to, have a futuristic world, but I went to Oasis Landing in, the default Into the Future world, and I was like, this is too future, if that makes any sense. So this came about. I'm calling it right now, and this is a working title. This is also a work in progress. At this point of recording this, I am not done with it. I think all that's going to be in this video is just going to be the shell, but this is basically a cyber city. Now, I want to, and I still want to, build a cyberpunk city thingy from like scratch, but I just don't know how to work Create a World, and I'm really bad at Create a World. So for now, I guess this is like a trial run. I'm assuming that when I actually, if and when I actually get to building an actual like cyber city, it will probably be in a similar style, but maybe somewhat different than what I'm doing here. But I don't know, I guess this is like a trial run of what I can do, and I guess what right now I can get done with what I know, and just using some general inspiration images off of Google and stuff, and trying to work that into a coherent looking style, I guess. So I don't know what that world will look like if it ever comes to play, but this one right now is just sort of goofing off and trying to build. This is a small world. This is actually the world Arkham. I'll try to make sure to leave the link in the description below. That's a note to you editing Mari. Leave a link in the description below to this world. Though I will say I did slightly edit it. I did take it into Create a World just to add the lot that I'm building on right now, actually, because originally it was a small lot for City Hall here, and I wanted it to be bigger. So basically, this is the beginning of a cyber city. I'm calling this lot for now just Cyber City because it's sort of like supposed to be the city center. There are a lot of buildings in this area, and they're supposed to have different meanings. Originally, I was planning to do an interior for all of them. I don't know if that's going to happen because I don't know if my computer will let me do that. My computer might explode if I try to do that. Let me just put it that way. So far, I haven't had an issue running this, and I've not done too much in terms of detail, even to the point of me recording this, but I don't know if my computer will allow me to add detail to the interiors of each of these lots, even to the extent I was going to do, because every floor is not going to be populated in this build, but as you can see, even like around this point in time in the build, I'm working on sort of meshing out the insides of buildings, and that's me thinking about what I may or may not want to put in certain places. All this is subject to changes. Is very early in the build, and I will sometimes do that where I start to kind of plan out the floor. Sometimes I do that ahead of time just because when I'm placing down windows, I want the windows to make sense. So if I have a room where it doesn't make sense to have giant glass windows, like a bathroom, I kind of want to figure out in my head, where is that bathroom going to go before I finish it? And I have no sense of actual architecture, by the way. So no, there is no logic as to where bathrooms are placed. I mostly just sort of fidget walls around until I find a good way to lay things out. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but I don't really know where architecturally in real life a bathroom would be placed. It's more me just saying, where can I fit a bathroom in this place right now and make them work? So that's sort of like some things that I go through, and I try to avoid putting things like that on a wall where I know I want to have a lot of windows, on like exterior walls and stuff. Sometimes I know I want to flood windows there for the look of the building, and I try to avoid that at the time when I'm going through things. So this whole entire place though, I believe as of right now, I'm planning for it to have 4 or 5 rabbit holes. I think that maybe more, maybe less. I don't know once I finally finish it, because I'm sort of changing around what each of these buildings are. Like I said, originally when I was building this, I think every single building that I was building, all these little shells were going to be a different rabbit hole. That's not what I think I'm going to end up doing anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to it. But for now, I don't think that that's going to be the case. So I kind of have this weird elevated like platform, and it kind of goes up, and there's going to be like a little fixture in the center of this that's going there. And I use constrained floor elevations quite a bit in this build, actually. I had already done it once, I think, to get the foundation level down to where it's basically matching the height of a 1-floor building, which, you know, that's why everything is staying flush, and I can build walls right on the foundation because they are basically the same height right now, and that's why it's sort of letting me do that. But I will use constrained floor elevation again to kind of give the fake sky rises. I don't want to use the default EA shells in this build, so I don't have any plans to do that. So I will use it again to kind of make fake shells. I also didn't want the buildings to be too tall, if that makes any sense, just because this is a very tiny world, and I was originally looking at doing this world with like some of the faux deco buildings, and I thought they were just too big. They were too tall. It looked kind of awkward in such a tiny space. So I ended up going for this instead, which is just building the shells. As you can see, I don't have a plan when I go into this. That's typically why there's a lot of me kind of fumbling around, and I'll try something and look at it and then adjust it and then tweak it again. Like right now, I'm trying to figure out how to add on to a building, and I wanted the buildings to be kind of close together, but yet still their own individual buildings, if that makes any sense at all either. So, you know, I wanted each building to be separate building, but I wanted them to be close. I sort of wanted that claustrophobic-y, like close together city feel here, but at the same time, I wanted them to be distinct in individual buildings, which I don't know if I fully accomplished with this, but so far, it's not that bad. I've been enjoying what I've been doing with this so far, but that's sort of why I'm like, maybe this is a good project before I go into actually trying to build a world from scratch, so I can try to nail down how this is going to work and what my limitations are, I guess, in terms of the way I can build. So I think right now there's about 4 shells up there that I have. There'll be a couple more. And in terms of their interiors, I don't fully do the whole like planning for all of them, because I don't really know what all of them on the inside are gonna look like. I'm not 100% sure. I was thinking of maybe adding some train stations too to this lot. I think that's what I'm working on around this point in time, which is just trying to get the a train station outlet to be able to come out here at like the city center of the city. I don't know if that's gonna actually be, I don't know. I don't use the train stations a lot most times, and this is a very tiny world, so they probably don't make sense too much here in this world. This is a super small world. I didn't want a big one because, one, I don't know if I'll have the time to populate a really big world here, and like I said, this is sort of like a trial run thing, and I wanted it to load very, very fast because I just want to goof off with my mad scientist sim and just sort of go crazy, and I don't really want to have to wait for a massive world to load. I also wanted to try to be kind of detailed with these lots, hence where the interiors came about, and I wanted to maybe possibly do interiors for each one because I thought it would be neat to, even if it's not really useful, I guess for each building to actually have a place to walk into and go into. I don't know if that's gonna happen, like I said, though, because I don't know if my computer will allow it. This building right here that I'm working on, this like weird zigzaggy, jaggedy building, I think this one was actually supposed to be the City Hall building. I think I was planning for this to be City Hall, and because this is sort of futuristic theme, I'm thinking that I want it to be sort of like a I don't know if you call it like a destination spot, but like, you know, like when you first arrive into the city, because I was going to put the Into the Future like portal in this building. So, you know, it's like as travelers come from other worlds or like through portals and stuff, they will come through City Hall. They have to stop through here and like, you know, make sure they have all their passports and their papers and stuff signed, and they kind of come through City Hall. So that was sort of the idea I was going for with this. I have not detailed this building yet. I don't know if that's going to come to play or not, but in this world, or at least in my mind, you know, aliens and robots are things in this world, so things can be a little weird, and it would make sense. That's sort of like the vibe I wanted to go for, where it's like alien type people are like normal here, and they're sort of a part of life. I'm playing around with constrained floor elevations here, again trying to work on skyscrapers. I think I tweaked the heights of this a couple times because, like I mentioned, I didn't want it to be too tall. So I thought originally it would go super tall, and then I think it was too tall. And then I think at some point I end up making buildings different heights, just in general. So it takes a minute to play around with the constrained floor elevation cheat. Can make some really cool looking buildings, but it can also be a pain in the butt to work with. I will tell you that much, because if you forget to turn it off, or if you like hit the wrong button, it'll completely warp your build and it gets frustrating. So I think right about now I ended up deleting what I had done because I had a different idea, and I was starting to do it here. You could see where I put those two pipes there. They're just temporary. I do that a lot, where I'll place down the little poles that hold up things or create like the supports, because I'm trying to do something above it, and likely I'm going to delete them or replace them later. I just need them there temporarily. But I kind of had this idea for doing these like glass tubes that go amongst these skyscrapers, because I thought that'd be cool, where it's like, you know, when you're at the top floor, you can walk through this glass tube way. Now, I would never do this in real life. I'm terrified of heights, but for The Sims, I thought it would be really cool to be able to like walk through a glass tube, maybe probably with a glass floor too, and like, you know, be able to go in there. And here's one of the frustrating parts that I was talking about with constrained floor elevations. Like I didn't mean to raise that one building's walls up, but I got too close to it. It triggered them to raise, and then I couldn't get it to flatten the ground back down. I had to like break the walls and start over and like rebuild them, because it got stuck. And sometimes you just gotta do it. Just gotta pay attention to what you're messing with constrained floor elevations, because sometimes when you do something like that, you do have to, I try to fix it as fast as possible, because if you forget and you have a bunch of stuff elsewhere, it gets more frustrating because you can accidentally change a bunch of things. I have a habit of using the One More Slot package, and that gets completely warped if you mess with the ground elevation around them. So if I was to use that in any of the interiors here, and I realize later that something's broken and I need to like flatten the ground, it will completely mess up the heights of those things, and it's very frustrating to work with. So I'm trying to make sure that everything looks good before I move on past the shell stage. And this actually takes a while to do. I mean, this is, I think, about 2 sessions of recording. I say sessions because at some point I stop. I think that was just it right there. There was like a break in the video, and it kind of jumps. Normally when you see that, that's because I actually stopped building for the day, or at least the time frame, and I come back later. Sometimes I stop to walk my dog and I'll be back later that day. Other times I'm just like, I'll be back when I'm back. So, but when I do that, typically I try to get it as flawlessly of a jump as possible. It typically doesn't work out that way, but I have to take breaks, so I typically tend to record for an hour at a time. I think this was about 2 or 3 hours just to get the shell of this building down. I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but I think I said in previous speed builds that it's like, these builds take me a long time to do. I mean, they're speed build and you'll see them in like 30 minutes, but for me, that might have been like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 or 4 hours of just straight up building, and typically I don't do that all in a day. While I would love to, I normally don't have time to. So a lot of the times this is sort of spaced out into chunks that I speed up and try to mesh together as best as I can. I think what's happening right now was that to get that idea of having the glass tube between the buildings, I'm going to delete what you see there. I needed it there for support. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out where the glass tubes will be placed and then get the heights down of the other buildings. So here's where I think I chose to split these two buildings kind of into two tops because I wanted them to be a different height. And I was playing with the constrained floor elevations and the shape of this building. I was thinking maybe I'd have it do like a weird jaggedy bend. Like maybe it'll drop down and like, you know, have like a weird slope to the side of the building because obviously, like I mentioned, I wanted it to be sort of alien-esque in the sense that people from other worlds populate this world too. So it's not just human Sims, you know, there might be Sims from other aliens. I would imagine their architecture would look much different. So that's sort of what I was trying to get, but I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I didn't like it, so I ended up like making it just a normal flat top of a building, but then it was frustrating me because I wanted it to have different heights between these two, but since it's the same floor, and I think I was running out of floors to play with because you are still stuck with 5 floors, it's just an illusion that there's more than 5. It's actually still just 5 floors total, and I think I was hitting my cap there, so I wanted them to have different heights. The only way I could do that would be to split them up because I would get that weird slope in the ground between them. So now I was trying to figure out the best way to split them, I guess, which was just sort of making a nice little cut right down the middle. And then I had to play around a little bit with the shapes of the buildings underneath them, which it's fine if there were some like weird pop-outs, because I think I even add some more later down the line, like pop-outs in the building just to add some awkwardly weird shapes to them, just because I didn't want them to just be straight rectangles, I guess, the entire time. I mean, that's what most of them are in general, but I wanted them to start. So I made that one a bit taller on this end, and I wanted the other one to stay shorter. So there you have the only way I could get that to work with the way I was thinking would be to split it up the middle. I think right now I'm working toward the back of the building, and I do add more glass tubes. This way, I turned back on constrained floor elevations at this point because to delete the foundation close to the buildings without it completely warping them, because normally, like I said, if you delete things or change things around where you've used constrained floor elevations, it will bork the buildings and it makes them all weird. So I didn't feel like dealing with that and fixing it, so I turned it back on. If you turn it back to true, you can then delete stuff around them and it won't mess with the actual elevations of the ground. So near the back here, I don't know, I thought it was weird that there's that grass right there and it just sort of very sudden change. So I sort of am thinking of, or am going to, add sort of like a grassy area back here. So it's like the grass sort of bleeds into the sidewalk a little bit on this side of it. And I'm building right now what is going to be, at least I'm hoping it turns out nicely, sort of like a giant glass box in a way. So it's like a big glass like greenhouse area, and I'm thinking of attaching the bistro to it. Bistro? How do you say that? The fancy eating place. I'm thinking of maybe attaching it to that one. I don't know, but that's what I may or may not actually do that, but I wanted it to be sort of like a big glass greenhouse that's attached to the back of this building, and it is very rectangular, it's very like angular, it's nothing fancy, but it's just like, I was thinking of it being like an outdoor, quote unquote, outdoor eating place, even though it's not outdoors, if that makes any sense. So yeah, everything around it is going to be all glass. So this is an area where I intend to put a lot of windows. So like I was mentioning earlier, I don't have any plans to put any bathrooms back here because I'm going to be probably putting a ton of windows around these buildings, and it would be really awkward to have just a giant glass window right in front of your bathroom. So, you know, this is more glass tubage. So that's sort of where the glass tube look kind of comes in. So I think this building I mentioned was City Hall, and I think I was going to make it the business office as well. So it's like City Hall, the business office, and the bistro, however you say it. The fancy place, the fancy building place are supposed to go back here. So Originally this part was going to be that area, the bistro. I don't know if it's gonna stay that way. I don't. Like I said, I'm sort of taking this one step at a time. I know I have all these buildings, all these shells, but even if some of them just end up being decorative, that's fine. It's mostly to fill in this space and make it look very, I guess, alive. So they don't all have to have a use. I was just hoping that they could all have a use, because I thought that would be pretty neat to have a use. There again was constrained floor elevations being weird, where the ground is like stuck at the top. You couldn't see it. It was being weird, but I had to like flatten it to make everything actually give me the support on the walls, because everything was crazy. So you got to be careful working with constrained floor elevations, but it can be a really neat cheat if you use it. Just be careful. I've loved it ever since I found out about it. I don't know when I discovered constrained floor elevations, but I've had a thing for using it ever since then. But I use it only when I know it's needed in a build, just because it can be kind of frustrating to work with. It's not like my go-to thing. It's just that if I know the illusion or whatever I'm trying to do, I can't really achieve easily without it, I use it. It's just the easiest way to do it. So yeah, I'm making some more of those glass tubes at this point. So there's a glass tube that comes out of the back of the shorter tall building, and it goes around and into the side of the building on the outer layer. And then the building on the outer layer, I believe, will also have like a glass walkway that will go from its part into the building that's over to the left of the screen. So it's like partially towards the front. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's sort of where I'm going with this. And none of this is not planned, by the way. So that's sort of where some of the flailing around in my builds come from, and why I sometimes cut a lot of stuff out that I consider to be useless. I don't know if it helps anybody to see this type of thought process, because there is a lot of trial and error of me saying, what I thought I was gonna do, I'm not gonna do, and I don't like it. So that happens a lot when I'm in the process of building. This is no exception. I had no actual plan. I had several inspiration pictures that I was sort of drawing from, but none of them were a definitive exact layout of what I'm doing. I had found some pictures just Googling like Cyberpunk City on just general Google, and I found some, and I definitely took some inspiration from quite a few of them. I think I had like 3 or 4 open on the side of the screen at the time I was building this, and I'm just referencing them and thinking about how I can try to work some of the ideas that they had into what I'm doing here. I think the glass tubes actually came from one of them, and then I think I might have gone a little overboard with the glass tubes just because I thought that was a cool idea. So these tallest buildings there have them. So at this point I'm deleting all of the little supports because they're not necessary. I wanted them to literally look like floating glass walkways, so I don't intend for them to have supports underneath them. I want them to look like they're just there. I mean, none of this makes sense architecturally, but I mean, I don't think any of my builds ever do, so I'm not trying to be architecturally sound now. So I'm deleting now. Those walls were just there literally to build the ones on top because I didn't want to have to deal with the support issue. So now you see they're like floating walkways. So the plan is that they have glass floors, glass ceilings, and glass all around the side, so that it's like you can look out in every direction and walk through this floating walkway. So I'm adding some of those pop-outs that I was talking about, just random extensions on the sides of the buildings, just because I didn't want them to be perfect squares. You'll see later when I actually start doing the details of some of the colorations, I wanted it to be somewhat kind of grungy, but not full on grunge. Like the dystopian future of Oasis Landing is too dystopian, but at the same time I did sort of want a little grunge to it, and that means I use a lot of colors actually. Surprisingly, I've been using some interesting little color pops when I detail these buildings. I'll get to that in the next video of this Cyberpunk series. I'm still working on this a lot, by the way. I kind of try to work on it a little bit at a time, and I'm trying to take it easy and detail the lots individually. So actually right about now I'm doing this edit on the tall building, and I end up making this really weird looking pattern. Again, it was actually a mistake that I thought looked cool. I was trying to add little extensions just to give some of the buildings some variation and style, I guess, and I was gonna have like these little like partition-y looking parts to it, and when I did it and I pulled it out and I flattened the top, it didn't flatten the sides like I thought it would, and it kind of made this weird looking spearhead arrow top to the building. I just thought it looked neat, so I left it there. So that was just a weird, happy accident, at least happy for now. I haven't tried to detail that building yet. It might be a pain in the butt to deal with, but you know, you go through all that and that's pretty much what you have. And then I kind of add some more of those weird little jaggedy jet out areas there, and again, it's just to try to get some different shapes because I didn't want everything to be a straight up cube. I go in and kind of add some more detail to each individual lot as I start to detail them around each lot, because I'm actually coloring and doing the actual wallpaper and definition of each lot one at a time, because I want to try to make sure each lot is defined and individual. And I think if I tried to do them all at once, they would start blending together too much. So I'm taking it one step at a time. I think that's basically about it in the general vibe of this. If this helped, I hope it does. I've never really done like a full-on commentary about what I'm doing or where my brain is going, and I don't know if it's been helpful or if my rambling has just made the video worse. If you prefer for me to just shut up next time, I totally will. I have no problems with you guys telling me that I talk too much. I know that I talk too much. You don't have to tell me. But if my talking too much bothers you, I can just shut up next time and play music if you'd rather prefer that instead of listening to me ramble. But I think at this point, I'm drawing close to the end of this. I think that about what I ultimately have to say, I'm going to come back in and do the details for a lot of these lots in their own videos, because I'm taking them one step at a time, so I'm recording them in one session at a time, and I'll probably release the videos of the details of each lot one step at a time, and then hopefully we'll have a finished product at the end. Whether or not this will be up for download, I don't know, because I don't know how much CC I'm going to use. I don't intend to use a lot of custom content in this. I do think I'll end up using some, and I don't know what that custom content will be. So I can't say for sure it will be up for download, at least not even immediately. I might have to go back and do some research about where I got some of the stuff I use. I don't plan to use a lot if I detail this, and if I do, I don't even know, because this, like I said, is an existing world that I did not build, but I did in fact edit, and I do not have permission to re-release in the state that I edited in. So I'm not sure about how that goes, but I mean, you should be able to find a place to place this elsewhere if you want, but I'll see about trying to make sure if I finish this up and it is in a playable state. And I say playable because, like I said, if I detail all this, I might blow up my own computer. Oh yeah, this was a really cool part. I forgot about this. The crystal tree in the center. I used the tree from Lunar Lakes. I think it was Lunar Lakes. And I used a CC thing that makes things bigger, and I put it in the center. I think I got this inspiration from one of the pictures I had. There was like a cyber city that had a big tree in the center, and I'm like, that's cool. I want to put a giant tree there, but I don't think you can actually blow up the actual trees from The Sims. But you can blow that up because it's an object. It actually works too. I did test this at some point. I actually put a sim in the world and walked up to it, and you can infuse the tree and actually pick the fruit off of it, even though it's giant. So it's pretty neat that it works. But yeah, so that's sort of the centerpiece of this lot right here, is this giant tree, that's crystal tree that sits in the center. And it does change shape too, so it's really neat. You can imbue it with the different emotions, and it changes shapes and stuff. But you know, so it's that's right now. This is as it stands, the cyber city in the way that it works. I am going to be adding to this and tweaking it and changing it as long as it keeps my interest. I'm going to make that caveat. Like I said, I apologize for being gone as long as I did, but honestly, I do have to have the motivation to want to do something, because I feel like if I don't, my building suffers for it as a result. So right now I'm super interested in building Cyberpunk. I am not abandoning my other projects. I will very much likely be returning to those two. Just I gotta have the want and the desire to do so, which I'm sure will come back. It just takes the right spark. Anyways, though, I think I'm about done with all I have to say, and this video doesn't have too much longer to go, so I will leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, then please give it a like, or don't. That's up to you, and apparently you can't dislike anything anymore because YouTube decided that hurts people's feelings too much, but if you dislike this video, dislike it anyway. I will still see it, and I would appreciate your feedback. But anyways, I will see you guys in the next speed build video, which will likely be focused on this for a while, because this is what I'm interested in right now, and I'm hoping to take it to the actual finish line. I don't think I've ever fully created like a save file for a world before, and I'm aiming to do that. So crossing my fingers that it holds my interest long enough to do it. So anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for the watch. Bye-bye.